My name is Joe Putnick. I'm a volunteer and I serve as the chapter president for YCP New York City. I'm going to talk briefly just kind of about what we've been planning and what the last couple of years have been like. And then we have, if you haven't met her already, the founder of YCP. As Father said, this isn't a new apostolate. It's been around for about 12 years, and it's all because of this person. So the only reason something like this is possible is because of Jen, and we also have some folks from the other chapters, so there's definitely a national reach, but I certainly appreciate you guys being here. You know, so much went into tonight. For the longest time, we were going to be 29th chapter, and then they told us that so long as we launch after October 8th, we'll be the 30th chapter. So I called the 3 West Club. I was like, yes, we'll be available starting October 10th. And then we saw that Taylor Swift was launching an album, and we said, you know, when is that going to happen? And we reached out to her team, and they said, as long as you're by October 21st, you should be good. So a lot of thought, and I'm half kidding, but a lot of thought really went in. And a lot of people, this isn't just me, this is, like Father said, this is about community. We have a team. I don't know if everyone's standing in the same place, but if you're on my leadership team, if you could raise your hand. There's only a few folks, but a mighty team. We've got a very generous board of directors. Obviously, these events aren't free, so you know they're incredibly magnanimous. I don't know if you guys want to raise your hand as well. A few of them. Thank you so much. And then we've got our chaplains, 2 of which are here tonight. Father Daniel is one of our chaplains. We're so grateful. And then I don't know if Father Isaiah is here or where he is, but he's our head chaplain. There he is in the back. And if you want to know, if you guys are curious, the marker of when childhood ends, it's when you call somebody younger than you Father. We're very grateful for you, Father. You know, I started working on this right before the pandemic, if you can believe it, about 2.5 years ago. Probably the most common question I got is, what exactly is this? You know, YCP is an organization from Dallas, Texas, and it's just making its way to the Northeast. You know, I found myself giving slightly different answers every time, so I had to kind of come to a unified one. I think YCP is just an exercise in community building, so it's already working. Here's a great community. You know, as soon as next month, we'll host speaker series and career panels, but these are really just a pretext for gathering and fellowship with one another. And in no uncertain terms, this is meant as a way and a mechanism and a vessel for us to grow closer in our faith together. When we think about community, I think it's a phrase that is maybe different to everyone. It's a permanent monolith to some. It's vague and tenuous to others. You know, we live, I don't have to tell you, but we live in one of the most dense and diverse cities in the Western world. But it doesn't necessarily mean to live here. It means that you inherit the type of community where we feel recognized and seen. By any stretch, you could describe New York as a hotel culture. We're sort of all on top of each other, but we're not always interacting. We don't always see the needs of our fellow neighbor. So I think a good summative of the type of community that we're striving for and we're hoping to cultivate. And I'm not sure who said this, but if you know, you can tell me. It's when we're down in the valley in life, unexpected hands lift us up. When we experience the consequences of our own sin, unmerited love, which maybe in this context we could call grace, helps us to keep going. And I think most importantly in a community context, when we're in search of guidance, a lot of our spiritual leaders are moral exemplars. To use a YCP phrase, our modern day saints come in some of the most unassuming and unlikely figures. And I think over the last couple years, and I think all throughout my life, I'm sure you have too, I've found that to be true. I think it's important to remember in a ministry like ours, community is not something we earn in any meritocratic sense. Our job status holds no bearing when we enter this room, just like when we enter a cathedral. Christ was a carpenter, and the Bible doesn't exactly venerate the tax collector, as we know. But this is a community we know that envelops us. It's something we contribute to, and it's something worth preserving. Community is a vehicle that helps us see outside our own personal needs. It binds us to something much larger than ourselves, and it creates a covenant towards our neighbor. It installs a sense of reverence for those who came before us. It gives us deference to institutions and groups that we so often rely on, and it orients us, probably most importantly, in a lifelong obeisance to God. We see community as a round table. It's not a square table. None of us in the laity class are at the head, especially myself. Each of us has a seat, and each of those seats is endowed by our Creator with a soul that's worth saving. If you joined us earlier, we had Mass at what many people call America's Cathedral. I call it New St. Pat's, but some people call it America's Cathedral. You know, it's truly an awe-inspiring place to worship, and this was one of Jen's first times being here, and it's to see it through somebody's eyes for the first time, it helps put it in perspective. But when you walk out the beautiful archways, you go down Fifth Avenue, I think we're all confronted with the same paradox, and it represents a lot of the problems we have. It's a paradox of beauty and brutality. We look up, we see a lot of the luxury retail stores that are emblematic of, I think, the type of ambitions and economic opportunities and the lifestyle that many people come here in search of. We look down, and I think we all know what we see. We see our fellow countrymen. We see a neighbor. We see a child of God sleeping on the steps in great suffering and pain, crying out for help. And for a lot of us, outside of the occasional outreach, so many of us in the working class are probably estranged and almost incapacitated on how we're able to help. Whether you live here or not, you know that these problems aren't exclusive to Fifth Avenue, but this has become a city that's ripe for both civic and moral renewal. A few weeks ago, including Father Daniel, a handful of us attended a summit in our nation's capital through the Lumen Institute. And the theme of the conference was leading through stormy times. And you didn't have to be at that conference to know that I think that's a good characterization for what many of us have felt as being Catholic workers in a secular world that's grown increasingly hostile and wanting to censor us in our faith. But it's not the first cultural storm we've had, and it's not certainly our last. We can look to our city's rich Catholic heritage for the types of exemplars who maybe weren't predestined towards sainthood, but God called them to serve a cause and a problem, and they humbly answered that call. We can look at Dorothy Day, Fulton Sheen, Elizabeth Ann Seton, Francis Cabrini, Pierre Toussaint, and so many others. And God calls us to our own vocation. It's uniquely ours. We have a shared vocation as Catholics to not only keep the commandments, but to serve our neighbor, to help the less fortunate, and I think especially in our current climate, protecting the unborn and protecting life itself. None of these things are as efficacious and as even possible without our ability to unify, our ability to self-organize, and to nationalize our efforts. Many of you have asked how you can support our ministry, which we certainly appreciate. But I think the best thing you can do is what you did tonight. You showed up, and the next best thing is to just bring a friend. I'd like to end with a passage from the 20th century lay theologian, Reinhold Niebuhr. I think he was actually a Protestant, but count it for right now. He's probably most famous for the Serenity Prayer, if you're familiar with that. But he has a passage in his book, The Irony of American History, that I think helps bring a few of my points together. Reinhold writes, "Nothing worth doing in life can be completed in our lifetime, therefore we're saved by hope. Nothing that's truly beautiful or good makes complete sense in the immediate context of history, therefore we must be saved by faith. And nothing we do, however virtuous, can be accomplished alone, therefore we are saved by love. And no virtuous act is quite as virtuous from the standpoint of our friend or foe as it is from our own standpoint. Therefore, we must be saved by the final form of love, which is forgiveness." So I think when we put the community together, fellowship, vocation, love, redemption, and the backbone of our lives as Catholics is the ability to forgive and ask God for forgiveness, I think all these make up an ethos that shape our own formation, and they point us towards providence. As you can tell, I called out a lot of big things, so you know that the work is just beginning, and it's actually never over. The success of our chapter is not preordained, so we do ask you to pray for us. We ask St. Joseph, who's YCP's patron saint, to pray for us as well. And we certainly hope that you'll continue to join us on this journey together. So thank you very much.